All right, welcome to today's workshop. It is the first in a series that I'm calling the AI Pro series. We're going to be running it weekly for who knows how long. And today we're starting with the fundamentals. I pulled a community to see kind of like what they wished for. It's the MCM community hosted by Lori Harder and Chris Harder, and everybody wanted to learn about AI systems and workflows, which I feel is a really good place to start because it's really at the fundamentals of what you need to know in this new AI era. I would argue that it is probably the most important skill in the AI era. So today we're going through AI systems and workflows, systems thinking for the AI era, and how to build your own AI operating system. Might sound overwhelming, but we're just taking the first few steps. So, quickly, a little bit about me. My name is Amanda Benson. I am Swedish American, grew up in Sweden and moved over here, 15 years ago now. I started my career in corporate communications, financial communications, and I have been in online business and marketing for 20 plus years. So, starting in corporate, I got the opportunity to work with big Fortune 500 companies. These were the ones based out of Sweden, but some of them you might recognize like IKEA, Spotify, and H&M. This was super valuable for me because already back then I saw myself as more so a creative. And anytime I heard systems mentioned, I was like, ew, that sounds really boring. But when I was in my corporate career, something just clicked because I saw how these big, successful corporations that have grown to the big beasts that they are today, they all had one thing in common. And that was that they have amazing systems and amazing workflows that ensure that they always deliver their products and their deliverables as top notch, right? We all know the example of McDonald's, how they really systematized their business and were able to have teenagers work in the restaurants and still create amazing burgers. You know, you get the same thing every time. Another example is Starbucks, that is also known for its meticulous systems. But the cool thing is that even if you are a creative, systems really what they do is once you have them set and they're working for you, they free you up to focus on what really matters, being you, bringing your creativity, bringing all that is like magic about you. So, the cool thing is, in the last few years since 2022, we have all been able to take part in the AI era. ChatGPT came out at the end of 2022, and because I had already been working in this space and adapting systems to small and medium-sized businesses, even personal brands, I just saw the potential and the revolution that was about to happen. So, we are now a few years into this new AI era, and we've gone from simply being able to use something like chat in ChatGPT to much more robust systems. However, a lot of us are still stuck in that, like using chat as a glorified Google search bar, right? But today I'm here to talk to you about how I've seen as little as $20 a month. So, subscribing to ChatGPT or subscribing to the paid version of Claude can send you or save you 20 plus hours a week and 10,000 or more dollars a month that you would otherwise spend on contractor costs. So, again, I've seen this happen for me and I've seen it happen for my clients. And I'm super excited to get you started on this journey because we have merely just scratched the surface. So I love this graphic that I actually stole from one of my favorite influencers and thought leaders in the space of tech and AI. Her name is Silicon Valley Girl. I'm trying to remember, is it Melina? I'm sorry, but she's known as Silicon Valley Girl, and she posted it online a few weeks ago. This is Claude specific, but I do think that the graphic perfectly describes the different layers that we see within AI. So, starting at the top, like we were saying, the chats, right? The glorified Google search bar type of thing. And then as you go down the layers deeper and deeper, you're getting into the more advanced versions of using AI. But that's the thing, right? Don't get tripped up on the word advanced because it's really not that hard to get all the way down to what we where we really get leverage in our business. So starting to work with projects, we see that's the third layer down. You can gain a lot of momentum just starting to work with the projects features in ChatGPT or, for example, Claude. And then as you build out systems, so what are systems? It's really defining where there needs to be a trigger that then turns into a process and delivers an outcome. Starting with projects, that's really what they are because projects within ChatGPT and Claude are not just folders to organize your chats, they can actually become smart projects. You can have more so global instructions or prompts per se that direct how those projects operate. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but I want you to start thinking about projects in the on these platforms as something totally different than just your standard old folder on your computer. So again, like I said, systems are really here to free you. They are not this like constricting thing. They are supposed to be a freedom thing. They're supposed to help you spend time in putting energy into the things that only you can do. So as we can get AI to do all the busy work for us, we can spend more time in the human interactions and we can spend more time doing the things that actually matter in our business. So, I want you to think about this. If you were to disappear for a week in your business, would things still happen? Would things still flow? If not, you have a business that doesn't have systems. It is purely running off of memory and it's your memory. And whether you realize it or not, that is very taxing. You're not going to be able to scale a business that is solely running off of your vibes. We want it to run off of AI's vibes. All right, so here is just one example once we're getting into the deeper versions, the deeper layers of working with AI. So once you get to the point where you're using co-work in Claude or you're even coding things yourself, and again, don't get hooked up or tripped up on the word coding because guess what? These are large language models. They will build stuff for you simply by you speaking it into existence. I created this dashboard very simply in less than 30 minutes the other day before I did a little presentation for some realtors here locally. And it just gives you an understanding of what AI can do for us today. My goal in my business and what I do for my clients is really to turn things around from us being the ones prompting AI every single time we want to have work done to the AI prompting us. We set up the workflows, we set up the systems, and that can really turn things on its head. So instead of you doing all the heavy lifting and the work, AI just checks in with you every now and then and goes, hey, there's these last few things that you need to finish up on your lead magnet. Hey, I have some opportunities for you to speak in the next few months. Hey, there were those follow-ups that you didn't get to. So you can see how as you just work through setting up systems in your business, it can really take all of that time and energy that you are spending managing and remembering all these things off your plate so that you can spend more time in your genius. All right, so a little rhetorical question here. Are you ready to become AI powered? Anyone that showed up to the call today or who's watching the replay, I'd bet you are because otherwise you wouldn't be here and show curiosity. I'm super excited to bring this to you today because, again, systems thinking is at the fundamentals of starting to build solutions for you, your team, your business in this age of AI. So let's get into it. Now, I know that several of the people on the call, and if you're watching the replay, you might be at kind of different levels, but I'm really going to try to whip through the basics really quick, just so we know that everybody has a good understanding of what we're talking about today. So again, a lot of what I'm teaching in this workshop, we could totally do on ChatGPT as well. But it would be very hard for me to show examples on both platforms. It would just take way too much time. So for ease of use, we're going to be on Claude for now. And at the end of my presentation, I do have a little live example, one for ChatGPT and another one to just peek in at my system that I have set up in Claude. All right. So when you subscribe to Claude, that's the first thing. Please, if you have not started to subscribe and pay for one of these platforms, starting at the $20 a month is so worth it. You will never find an assistant or an employee that is going to be cheaper than that. And if you walk through what we're talking about today and what we'll go through in these upcoming workshops, you're going to be able to leverage those $20 like no other. Okay. It's going to be the best $20 that you spend each and every month. So once you are subscribed to Claude, you do want to download the desktop version because while it still communicates, like you can use it interchangeably, the mobile version and the desktop version has some capabilities that the mobile version does not. So let's take a look at that. I do want to give you one little recommendation before we get into it, just simply to toggle the memory feature on when you get set up with Claude. You just go to the settings, navigate to capabilities, and then toggle the memory settings on. You see up here in the right-hand corner. You can also import memory if you haven't done that yet from, say, ChatGPT or Gemini. Just follow the instructions that Claude have set up. So this is just going to make sure that this environment is really helpful to you. I got a question when I did a similar training yesterday if this is feeding like training Claude. This is not to be confused with that. You are not sharing your information to train Claude as an LLM when you turn on the memory. This is simply for Claude to be able to access your old information when it's communicating back to you. Okay? All right, so we're reversing a little bit back to chats. So, chat, I want you to start thinking about as more so temporary work. Even if you can return to chats, even if you have your favorite prompts that you drop in every time, chat is really meant more so for temporary work. And if we're looking at the desktop view, you can see up here in the left-hand corner that we have a toggle that can be on, right now it's on the chat section that we're going to talk about first, the most basic version of working in Claude. But then right next to it, we see co-work and code. Today, we're not going to be talking about code, but we are going to eventually look at a little bit of work that we could do in co-work. So just for you guys to, kind of be able to navigate, we're starting in chat. All right, so remember I said the third layer of AI is projects, and that is already where the magic starts happening. So once you start setting up projects, it just opens up this amazing ability for you to start setting up systems and workflows more so in a fashion where you set it and forget it rather than, again, like I said, just, reinventing the wheel every single time. In Claude, you're going to be on chat and we have projects there. They're a great way. We're going to go through a few examples later of how to set a project up in the basic chat version. That would be the same way that you're setting up projects in ChatGPT. Later on, we're going to talk about projects that exist in Co-work and how those differ. So, what are projects and what do they allow us to do? So, it's really cool because we have the ability to add system instructions. And like I said, system instructions is very much like a prompt, but it's a prompt, more so a global prompt that applies to everything that happens within that project. So, there are so many things that we do repeatedly. A good example is, for example, proposal writing. Maybe you have a way that you always write your proposals. That would be that global system instructions prompt that you add to the project itself. And then every single time you start a chat within that project, it's already going to know those. And maybe all you drop in is, okay, this is the new client, their name. Maybe it's even a transcript from having a meeting with your Fathom app, your Granola app, or even Zoom itself. You just drop in the transcript and the project based off of the instructions that you already set for it, will be able to grab the information that it needs and create that proposal just like that. So that's just one example to get you starting to think about projects and how you can set up these different systems and workflows within a closed ecosystem, one workspace. So again, it could be anything from processes, it could be a template, it could also be used just as a way to organize your chats that are all within a certain category. Projects also allows us to add context. We're going to take a little bit of a deeper look later where we do that. But context is any type of training files. That could be previous work that you've done. It could be PDFs, Word documents, I mean, you name it. I do want to add a little tip here, though. It is a good idea, it's a best practice to convert your documents into a .md file, especially when you're working in Claude, because it ends up using up more tokens. That's what you pay for, right? So you run out of tokens faster if the AI is having to look at PDFs and more complex files, whereas the .md files are easier for the AI to read. You can easily create a .md file simply by plugging in the PDF and telling the AI, hey, can you please convert this from a PDF to a .md file? And then we talked about the chats, great way to organize your chats. Any chats that are started within the project are going to live within the project, but you can also add old chats from your history. You know, that mess on your left, that just is like a long chat history. At least that's true for me. So many chats that are just in the abyss. It is a way for you to organize that. And then memory, of course. So memory will update automatically within projects, and it'll be specific to what happens in that project. You can also always tell Claude to add memory when prompted. For example, let's talk about the proposals again. You're in there working and, one of these proposals just turns out so amazing. It's better. You made some adjustments. It's better than it's ever been before. Just simply prompt Claude to remember what you did for that proposal and save it in its memory, and it'll update the instructions so that it'll produce that same level the next time you're in there working. So it's a super cool to also just be communicating, again, just communicate like a human with it. You like something, give it the feedback, and it'll save it for later. All right, so if we're looking at the projects view, again, remember we're still in the chat section, so these are the more basic projects. You can see that on the left-hand side, we have a little menu. Project is right there below starting a new chat. And it allows us, again, like I said, to organize and be really mindful about how we set things up, and it can run specific workflows. So if you want to start a new project, you just click up in the right-hand corner. It's going to ask you to name it and describe it. Here in Claude, the naming and description has nothing to do with the system instructions. When you do set up a project in ChatGPT, and we'll take a look at that later, it jumps straight into like adding your system instructions. So it's a little bit different, but still operates the same. All right, so I told you about adding files and instructions. As we can see, once we have the project set up, we have a section where we could go in and edit the memory if we wanted to, but otherwise it just updates automatically. Right on the right-hand side under memory, we have the instructions. That's where you would edit and add the instructions for the project. And then last on the right side, we have the files. So again, you can upload any files there, preferably .md files, and that will be a place where any chats that happen within the project can reference those. So we talked about the project, and now we're going to talk about skills. Skills are so far specific to Claude, but from what I hear, ChatGPT is also going to add the ability to use skills. So what are skills and how are they different from projects? Skills are really standardized instructions and they're reusable. So they don't just live within one project, they can be called upon anytime you're working in a chat or in a project. So a really good example here is say that you have a project and it's for visibility. So it's more like an umbrella term. That's where you handle all of your guest podcast pitching, all of your speaker opportunity pitching, maybe media pitches. So you have everything in that project and you have the global instructions for that. Maybe you have updated the files, you've added your media kit and your headshots and everything that you might need for anything visibility. But when you're writing a podcast pitch, you write it differently than you would write a pitch for a speaking opportunity. So, this is a perfect time to develop one skill that is specific for podcast pitching and another skill that is specific for pitching to speak. Okay. You can also call upon skills together. So, a brand, voice, and tone skill is one that's going to be used with a lot of other skills. For example, here, when we were talking about the pitching, you would probably call upon that skill together with the podcast pitching, or you would call upon that skill together with the speaking applications skill. So again, I think that helps you to kind of think about, okay, when I'm setting up projects, it's more so these like global instructions, like maybe the higher level instructions of a project. And then when it comes to these like minute details, you would use something like a skill. All right, just quickly a little bit about artifacts. It is more so for you to understand like the lingo, the glossary. This is also native to Claude. When we're talking about artifacts, it's anything that Claude kind of like gives you at the end of what it produces, right? So if you've asked it for a media pitch, it might be a PDF. If you have, like I did, set up a dashboard, it'll be given to you as an HTML page. Any one of those, it could be a Word document, any one of those end products that Claude gives you is referred to as an artifact. All right, connectors. So now we're getting into the slightly more complex when we're pulling in other types of software, other platforms. And that's what's amazing now. We can do it with ChatGPT. I feel like Claude is easier for this. And I chose 5 to feature here because I feel like just adding these 5 connectors into your Claude workspace is going to give you so much leverage. Those are Gmail. Of course, if you're on Gmail, otherwise find your email provider. It would be Google Calendar, Google Chrome for Claude to be able to access your web browser, Canva. Most of us running small to medium sized businesses, Canva is going to be a tool we use a lot. And then Notion or any other task management system. I used to be a big ClickUp user, but I am switching over to Notion merely or just because Claude actually works way better with Notion. I've found so far it can read and write, it can set up full like workflows and systems within Notion and delegate to other team members. So that's just, it's so awesome. Like just merely from a chat where I'm using human language. So I encourage you all to go in. You access this the connectors by, again, if you're on chat, on the toggled on over to the left in the chat section, you're going to find customize, and that's where you see skills and connectors. All right, so we're getting to the really juicy part. We're getting over to, again, the toggle is moving from chat to co-work. And co-work is where AI is starting to get really powerful. I would argue there's a lot of talk about AI agents right now, and I feel like there is some misuse. Cowork to me is not an AI agent, it's an AI assistant because you're still setting up the workflows, you're telling it when to run the workflows. Whereas when we're talking about true AI agents, they have agency. You would only give them the goal, and this can happen in code, okay? So it can happen, but we're not doing that today. But a true AI agent would just take the direction, hey, I want to find opportunities to speak and get featured on podcasts as a guest. That's all you would say. And then it would figure out the steps. We're still at the point where we're micromanaging AI. Okay. So they're assistants, they're a little bit lower on the totem pole. The cool thing about Claude Co-Work is that Instead of setting projects up within their ecosystem, so living in the Claude workspace, you are working on local folders and files. And this might sound so basic and like, yeah, okay, whatever, Amanda. Like, why does it matter? It matters so much because it means that whatever you build out and you have Claude working off of, you could have any AI work off of that. Okay. So you are not married to the Claude interface and the Claude ecosystem. When you set it up locally, you could point any AI tool, any LLM back to those same folders and files, and it will be able to read it. So this is where we're heading into what I talk about and I refer to as the AI plus U OS, the AI plus U operating system, because you're building something that you are going to make use of probably for years, maybe even decades into the future. You're setting up a folder structure and a robust system that as you add to it and as you build on it, it gets smarter and smarter. And like I said, you have full ownership and control of what happens in your AIOS or your AI brain, per se, right? Think about it as you just collecting all of your resources. So, if we're looking at this kind of schematic that I have here, I like to think of it for most of us, it's going to make sense to have something like your COO, your AI or AIVA, right? That looks at everything that's going on in your organization and in your business. Mine personally sends me a morning brief every morning where it has already, before I even get up out of bed, it has looked through my emails. It has drafted responses to important emails that I need to get back to. It has looked at my calendar and flagged for what I have coming up during this day, where I have opportunities to squeeze in other meetings or say time to do deep work. It's already being proactive and helping me plan and manage my day instead of me having to do all of those tasks. And like I said, it is that start of it prompting me rather than me prompting it, because it'll ask me, like, hey, it did some research on my competitors, it did some research on what's happening in terms of AI news, and it'll have already made social media captions, ideas for social media posts that I can choose to go ahead and publish or not. But again, instead of me prompting it, it's already coming and serving it to me like on a silver platter. So that's just one example, but we can do this for so many other parts of our business. So again, in that COO section, we have the idea of having a visibility dashboard. So anything going on in terms of you putting yourself out there on stages, on podcasts, so on. Have the AI set that up for you and then check in with you in terms of how you want to move forward on those opportunities. So I don't want to get too much into this. We're going to be talking way more about this if you follow along in this workshop series. What I do want to flag here, though, is I've talked about AI plus U for the past 3 years. It really is kind of my signature and foundation, like kind of model that I follow, because what we want to do in these file and folder structures is constantly just add information that is going to make the AI trained on you and trained on your organization. With missing the idea of like adding that folder that is about you, that's where you're going to miss like your unique advantage. Because the thing is, AI on its own and just doing busy work, it's just general, right? That's where people say, like, oh, I am not so impressed with AI because it's so generic. Well, it's because you haven't added the layer of you, your knowledge, your expertise, your decision frameworks, your goals, your mission, your vision, your voice guide. There are so many resources that you can develop that will allow the AI to better understand how to work uniquely within your operating system. All right, let's take a look. So, I think when we're going to like roll things back a little bit here, we're going to go back to just talking about systems. What I want you to start doing, whether it's when you're watching this, if you're here live on the call, or if you're taking some time later on, start to think about what you are doing repeatedly. audit your days, audit your weeks, right? What do you explain repeatedly? This might be things that you're explaining to your team repeatedly. What do you create repeatedly? What do you check in on repeatedly? And what do you forget repeatedly? I should have added one last thing here because I feel like a huge part and something where we have a lot to gain when it comes to starting to use AI is that list of things that we never get to. And sadly, those tend to be the things that actually are needle movers, like posting consistently on social media, getting those visibility opportunities. But because we're so busy on maybe client delivery, those end up being the last thing on our list. Well, if we delegate it to AI and AI can take over those processes, we are more likely to actually follow through and have those running for us routinely. So again, think about it. What are those systems that should be, kind of paid attention to so that you can set them and forget them and not continuously be in this loop? So I have a little exercise that you can do as you have time. Again, I will share this presentation. We'll share the recording later, along with a few other little resources that I'm going to leave you with at the end of this talk today. But I call it the sticky note exercise. So you don't need much more room than just a simple little sticky note. You take one task that you do, start with the ones that take a lot of time, things that you do daily, right? Practice writing everything down step by step and write it in its most detailed way, right? I love yesterday when I did a training in Dina's group, there was a lady who shared, I guess, I don't know if she had gone to school for coding, but she said, yeah, early on when you do like coding 101, they teach you the idea of explaining how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and explain it in such detail that a third grader who possibly has never made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before would understand how to do it. So, like, okay, go to the utensil drawer, pick out a spoon for the jam, and you pick out a knife for the peanut butter. You get what I'm saying? You catch my drift. Like, the more detailed you are, the easier it's going to be for the AI to understand what it is that you want to have done and exactly the way that you want it done. So there are a few ways to make this easier than or more automated than the sticky note method. So you could easily capture systems by writing them down, like we just talked about, but also recording yourself. So whether that be a Zoom or a video recording, if you're using things like Fathom or Granola that also creates transcriptions and summaries, that could be great. If you have heard of Scribe, it is a tool that is commonly used within organizations, mainly for like HR or creating SOPs. You basically do the same thing. You record yourself doing something on a computer screen, and it'll record both like what you say and what you do and put it into a step-by-step process. So that is a really good little hack that you can use because later the output from that can be plugged into AI in order to create an agentic process. And the last version is to use AI itself. So we can just start having a conversation, and that might be the fastest and easiest way because even a generic like AI chat is going to understand this idea of creating SOPs, creating a workflow, and then turning those into what we were talking about before, these like system instructions, the prompts that you're going to be using over and over again within a defined workspace like a project or something more complex like the systems we were talking about in co-work. So try just a few different ways. I like just brain dumping. Honestly, AI is so good these days. It is called a large language model for a reason, and it is because it's built to understand human language. So feel free to just speak to it. I love Whisperflow. It is a way to speak into any software app that you're using, and it really understands like everything that you're saying. The transcript is great. So that is one example of how you can start working on creating your systems and workflows. So just to kind of look back at what we've been talking about, the system creation formula, we have talked through these steps, but they really are do it yourself first, document those steps, go back and forth and improve it, like get it to the point where you feel like the AI output is exactly where you want it to be. You put it into a system, you automate it. You could move on to making it an AI assistant using something like Claude Co-Work, and we're going to talk about that. And the last step would be delegating it to an AI agent. We're not there yet, but that would be the natural last step. That's where you truly can set it and forget it. So we talked a little bit earlier. This week, I've done some examples like this when we're talking about visibility. We had that up and discussed it earlier. Podcast pitching, speaker applications. Earlier this week, I was talking to realtors. They do a lot of things on repeat, like listing descriptions, all of their various marketing materials, follow-ups, which would also, I think, apply to any business, right? Doing those follow-ups and business in general, client onboarding, content creation. Systems are everywhere. And once you really become aware of it, it's almost like I feel like you can kind of gamify it, right? Like how many systems, like how much can we build in AI and offload to AI? And you'd be surprised. All right, so we were talking about the projects in co-work and how they differ. So as you can see, the toggle is now not on chat anymore. If you're looking up in the left-hand side of the screenshot that I'm sharing, we have it in the middle, co-work. So projects exist here too, but they look different. As you can see, we still have, oops, let me go back. We still have the instructions in the upper right-hand corner. So that's where you're going to tell the project those global instructions, what it's here to do. But right below it, you see that we can schedule tasks, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in detail here pretty soon. And as I mentioned, rather than the context being files, those .md files that you've uploaded, it's actually pointing to files and folders inside, like on your computer. So we'll take a look at that later, what it looks like as well. And the cool thing is that when you're working like this, Claude has the ability to read these folders as in see what is in them. Anything that you drop in there, it can read, it can make sense of, it can help you work on, but it can also write. So it can set up folders, it can set up files within wherever you allow it to be working. And then also any, just like we talked about with projects before, anything that you're working on, any new chats are going to live within this little workspace. And yeah, so it just collects and it organizes your work there. Scheduled tasks, I flagged for that. The reason that this type of project, the reason that I consider it more a true assistant, not an agent, but an AI assistant, is for this very feature. The fact that we can start taking these workflows and processes that we're setting up inside of the projects and have them run on a schedule. That means you don't have to go in every single time and say, okay, now, look for the speaking opportunities or create my morning brief. You literally build it once, set it and forget it. Unless you want to make edits, there's no reason for you to be in here. It'll just be doing that workflow on repeat. So a few other ideas for you to maybe start thinking about what you want to set up in your business would be generic, that applies to all of us. A morning brief, I love it. I also have an evening recap, which is amazing. And then we do like weekly planning. Perhaps you want to take more of a weekly overview and see what's going on and how you can plan your week to the best way possible. Follow-up reminders, again, follow-ups are amazing. And if you have plugged in the connector so that your Claude has access to your email account, it will even be able to draft follow-up responses. So all you need to do is sign off, right? It is not automatically going to send on your behalf, but it'll give you an option of pre-written responses or pre-written follow-ups that you might want to send out to, say, your prospects, your leads, your clients. So there are so many examples of what we can do. And I want you guys to be able to get started today. I wanted to make sure that this workshop is not just talking about what's possible, but actually getting started. So we're going to look at a GPT example. So you're going to have to excuse me navigating these windows here for a little bit. I have my ChatGPT example that I set up when I was training with Dina yesterday. So I want to show you guys because I was talking about setting up projects. So projects are located over on the left-hand corner, like right above where your chats are. So if you want to add a project, you simply click the plus button, name it something. Hello, create the project. And then after that, you can add the instructions that I told you guys about earlier. So you would just go to the three dots up in the right-hand corner, add the instructions. I'm sharing a resource for setting up your own little visibility project. It's actually quite robust, and you'll get that at the end. But this is where you would drop those instructions and save. And then we were talking about the context, the resources, the files. You would upload those here. So just upload from your Google Drive or from your local computer. And of course, any chats that happen within this project are then going to follow those global instructions, and they're going to be organized within the project that you just set up. So that's just a quick look at like how you can start. And this is considered building with AI, okay? You can start very simple. In fact, I would encourage you to just start, like create a fun project. Maybe it's regarding meal planning. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your fitness. Do something where it feels safe and where you're not afraid to make mistakes per se. There is no mistakes to be made as long as you're following some safeguards. And unless you're letting the AI just like run wild on your computer or out online, you're going to be good. Alrighty. And then I have a second little example that I wanted to show you. Again, for the training that I did in Dina's program, which I might do that same training here during this AI Pro series, we were talking specifically about visibility. So I set up in Claude Co-Work. I started a project there, and instead of just giving it the instructions and running it on as a scheduled task weekly, I had it create this interactive dashboard. So as you can see, I have opportunities coming in every week now for speaking. It is all based off of what is relevant to me and the types of opportunities that I'm looking for. I told it everything when I set it up, so now it can just run automatically. So we have a few opportunities here. Speaking at the AI-powered women's conference at MIT, the Global Female Entrepreneur Summit. And I told Claude to build the desktop in such a way where I can actually even access the pitch, so a version of a pitch that it has already created for me, and easily copy paste it and email it or do whatever I want with it, edit it as I please. So these are just some examples. Again, this was just set up a couple days ago, so I haven't started running it, but as the replies come in or follow-ups are due, I would see that in these different sections of the dashboard. So again, this is one tiny example of how you can vibe code and build these types of dashboards or systems that keep track of things that usually just fall to the wayside. And all you need to do is when you get prompted that reminder, when you get the email from Claude that, your dashboard has updated weekly, you peek in, you see if anything is relevant, take action on what you feel like you want to move forward with, and leave the rest. That is really where we have made that switch from having AI prompting us to take action rather than us prompting it every step of the way. Because if I would have done this the old way, what would I have done? I would have gone out and I would have done the research first. Then I would have had to compile the research. Then I would have had to put together the pitch, right? And once it gets ready to send, I would have had to have my media kit ready. I need the speaker head or the headshots and everything that goes into it. Well, in this ecosystem that I set up, everything lives there, and Claude can pull it together for you automatically. So I think that is pretty much it for today's little presentation. I wanted to, like I said, I have the resources that you can download to start working on the visibility dashboard and have that set up for yourself. But I do want to just take a look at what this could look like because I don't want people to feel overwhelmed. I get it that it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but I would argue with what I'm giving you today, if you want to set up the visibility dashboard, you could have it done in as little as a couple hours. You could have a basic task that runs weekly, looking for speaker opportunities. You could have that done in less than 30 minutes. Okay. So we could do something very basic like that. Again, everything's going to be in that free download for you. And then in a matter of 2 hours, you could have a dashboard that is branded to you, trained on the opportunities that you're looking for, and you can have it up and running today. But if we break it up, the next week could look like day one today. Identify like what is that repetitive work, not just visibility. Like what is the repetitive work that you find yourself doing in your business every single day or every single week? Obviously, the things that take the most of your time, those are the things that you should automate first. The next thing would be tomorrow. Spend a little bit of time on one of those workflows that is one of those things that are repetitive work that takes up a lot of your time and just document that workflow. Remember that PB&J method. Think of the AI as this little young intern who has no clue how to do it. How would you explain it to a kid right out of high school or right out of college, right? And then day three, build something. Start, with a little tiny project, something fun. Again, maybe the visibility is a good place to start. Day four, add knowledge files, build out a few of these knowledge files that are going to serve you forever. That could be the brand, voice, and tone file, one file that you can reuse forever. Day five, create scheduled tasks. All you need to do is tell the AI. So if you're in ChatGPT, literally in the chat, you just say, can you set this as a task that runs every week, Monday morning at 8 a.m.? And it'll set it up for you. Make sure that you have the notifications toggled on if you want to get an email regarding that. But that is how easy it is. And then day six, you launch that first workflow, that first system. And day seven, you start all over again. You identify that next repetitive workflow that you want to make into an AI system. And so I told you guys I have a little gift that you guys can download and start playing with. When you open, it's a collection of files. There are one or two that are like just like a more basic way of setting up a project in ChatGPT or in Claude, like I was talking about, the chat version, the basic version, but it has the system instructions, like everything that you need to set up that speaker weekly scout or the podcast guesting scout. You can set those up, set them to run weekly, and that is like a 30-minute thing to set up. And then on the other hand, I have a whole plugin that you can use and put into a Claude Co-Work project. And as soon as you plug that in, it'll actually walk you through setting up everything that it needs. And at the end of it, you will have this dashboard that is completely tailored to you, your brand, and what it is that you're working on. It'll also help you spin up all of the knowledge files that you'll be able to use not only in that project, but across many other projects in terms of, we were talking about your AI brain or your AI OS. For example, your brand book, and like we were talking about the voice and tone document. Those are files that you're going to be using pretty much across most of the projects that you're running in your business, right? So even if it feels overwhelming at times, you're going to thank yourself later. Like doing this work up front and creating these folders, systems, and knowledge files, it's going to serve you. I'm telling you, it's going to serve you for months or years to come. All right. That was it for my little presentation today. Thank you so much for joining. Daniel, are you still with us?
Yeah, still here.
Do we have any questions? We can just open it up to the room. Let's see here. I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see the chat. Hi, Elena. Hi, Mackenzie. Thank you so much for joining live today.